Good afternoon. I'm Holly Anton. I'm an integrative psychologist at Sutter's Institute for Health and Healing in Santa Rosa. And welcome. Today, my intention is to talk about something that comes up in my work with people. I work as a psychotherapist, of course, and often people express having conflicting needs and conflicting intentions and conflicting wants, and that's a great deal of stress. And I think a great deal of our overall stress in our life is less from outside stresses and more from our own internal competing longings and interests. So I want to encourage you, if you have a paper and pencil or some other way of just jotting things down as they may come up in the call today, that you can think about and consider after the call. We all have these areas where we're needing to either make a decision or feel like we're making peace with a course of action that we don't feel very peaceful with. And especially making important decisions, what to do with our mixed feelings and mixture of concerns, I think is going to be an ongoing opportunity for growth for each of us. So to start this call and to honor the time that you've given yourself to be here, I encourage you to make yourself physically comfortable. Adjust yourself so your body's in a position where it can rest relatively undisturbed for this time, 20 to 25 minutes. It's not that you can't move through the call, but just to pay attention to however your body is supported and to feel grounded in your posture, so that your breath can start to be more clearly in your awareness in a comfortable way. As your body is comfortable and supported, it's much easier to feel the breath and to feel the breath get easier, less shallow, less strained. No need to control it. When the body's in a relaxed position, the breath does exactly what it needs to do. And paying attention to the body and the posture and noticing the breath settle into its own rhythm is another way, too, of letting your mind, letting your attention come to where your body and your breath actually are, rather than what is very easy to do, which is have the mind, kind of several issues away from the moment at hand. Whether it's lagging a couple of moments or minutes or years behind, or jumping a couple of moments, minutes, or years ahead. To have the breath and the body and your attention all in this one place at this one time. Because as you consider how to use your own wisdom, we will kind of inherently be talking about moments or issues or concerns that are challenging. And becoming aware of internal conflict, internal mixed feelings or competing desires Unless we approach it really respectfully and non-judgmentally and with a curiosity, if we approach it with too much of a heavy-handed problem solver or fearfully or in some defended stance, we're not likely to get to a more resolved feeling about whatever this issue is. So starting with the body and the natural breath and your attention to just this puts you in a much better position, you might say, to be able to look at things that are a bit more challenging. So, as I said, when I'm working with people, this is such a common experience for people that I find it helpful to honor or validate what these different competing interests and concerns are. Again, with curiosity rather than judgment. And while any of us can have competing interests and thoughts and feelings about things that span, widely, one tool, you might say, or one approach or perspective that I find helps simplify or consolidate or kind of bring easy attention to different kinds of interests we may have is looking at how the head looks at a matter. And yes, I mean in a not a anatomical way so much as how our rational sensibility looks at things, which can have tucked into it a lot of judgment, but also has tucked into it a lot of just useful information. And also how our gut, again, not truly anatomical, although all you have to say to somebody is, what's your gut reaction to that? And we all know what we're talking about. And again, the gut is, it's got a limited time reference. The gut is very much in the now consciousness. And its concerns are of a fairly narrow nature. Is it safe? Is it not safe? Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be pleasurable? Is it exciting or scary? Is it going to lead to a good thing or a bad thing? Very helpful input, a bit limited in scope, but incredibly helpful. And if we don't listen to what the gut says, and at least acknowledge it, it tends to start speaking more loudly. And then there's the heart. What does your heart say about a matter? What does this mean in terms of your relationship with others or your relationship to your sense of the world? How does this matter impact or come to bear on the things that are emotionally important to you? And so I'm offering this today, that there's a wisdom of each of these three perspectives, and that they work best when all are taken into account together. Any one of them without the input of the other two is at a disadvantage for being able to really consider the complexity of most of these situations where we have mixed feelings. That there's good reason that we do. And so, in the spirit of this, in the spirit of curiosity and of being non-judgmental about what each of these ways of knowing, each of these ways of making decisions has to offer, imagining that they are separate parts is just a convenient way of getting to that. So, of course, we are just a single being, and we really don't have parts, and we really don't have compartments in terms of our consciousness. We can imagine we do, but actually we are just a single being. But it seems to be helpful to imagine that there are these different parts so we can have kind of a conversation within ourselves. So I would like you to consider some matter that you currently or soon will have to make some choice about, either a choice to make a change in something or a choice to accept something that's difficult to accept. And it doesn't have to be one of the huge, big things. It can be a relatively limited in scope of importance. Yet it can also be one of the very big things. So to choose a matter, a concern, an issue, if you will, although it doesn't have to be like that, but something where you really have your own internal competing interests that are making that difficult to either decide about or difficult to accept. And it may be something very, very personal, or it may be something that extends beyond just your life. It may have to do with how you see the world or how you see your larger situation right now. Now, the order in which you ask yourself these things really isn't important, although I have my own particular preference. Mostly because I think if we don't ask the rational mind first, it just keeps interrupting. So I'll ask what your head has to say about this. Now, this includes the facts and the information, which themselves might offer conflicting info, but just to consider how the head views this matter of yours. What is the information that comes quickly to mind that has to bear on why the head wants to do it a certain way? And as you relax, remember, just staying curious, not too embedded in any of these positions, but is there any other information that you have but you don't often remember to consider? So, for example, is there any information that contradicts what the head wants to do? Do you have any past experience or any other form of reliable information that contradicts the head's knee-jerk preference on this matter? And does the mind simply have some ideas, beliefs that it doesn't really know where it got them, it just has them? Now, as you check in with another part, and I'll suggest checking in with the gut, your instincts. Maybe they coincide with what your mind thinks about this matter, maybe they don't. But just notice what your instant, automatic, spontaneous gut feeling is about either what to do or what the gut instinct is about what's the real concern here, what's really at issue. And there may be several things. What does the gut have to say about what is of most concern? Doesn't have to fit with any rational storyline. And what does the gut have to say about what it wants, whether it's realistic, possible, or not? The gut just wants it to be a particular way. If it does, checking in with what that sense is. And as you're breathing with this practice, remember, don't lose track of where your body is in the room. Don't lose track of your breath. You're bringing your mind's attention to your gut feeling here. In this body, in this moment. And similarly, as you bring your attention to what the heart has to say. What's the heart's dilemma in this matter of yours? What are your emotional interests? What's the heart's values? What's the heart level value that is perhaps a question here? And I don't know about you, but what I see when I do this practice is that my conflicting viewpoints or feelings often aren't so much between head, heart, and gut, but actually within each of them. We've got competing gut feelings often. We often have competing pieces of information. And we can certainly have competing interests of the heart. The things that matter to us in terms of how we show up in the world can sometimes be at odds with the things that also matter to us and how we show up in a relationship or how we show up in a certain social role. So being aware of where these internal dilemmas are in the head, in the heart, and in the gut is inherently validating. It just helps to make sense of your experience. It's you saying, yeah, well, I guess it makes sense that I feel this way given that this is how I see it. It makes sense that I would be at a crossroads here or pausing at this choice point because, yes, I can see how each of these things is important to me in different ways. Now, I hope also that what you start to see is that each of these ways of seeing through the rational, through the instinct, and through the emotional or relational selves has something to say, and each of them will be missing some important piece if it leaves out the other two. And so without trying to force any kind of decision or kind of magically solve this issue here in this phone call, really what I'm hoping to send you off with is just a different tool for being able to sit with this matter until you feel like you've heard from all counties, so to speak, until you feel like you've been able to make sense of this from the different angles. And then my encouragement is at that point, then just lay it aside for a time, whether that's a few moments, a few minutes, a few weeks, and come back into the simple presence of this moment. Notice how this moment is actually progressing just fine. This moment is showing up in a way that I hope for most, I think probably all of us at this particular moment isn't asking anything more of us than just to be in it, breathe in it. There may be a moment where a decision is going to have to be made, but maybe this isn't that one. We can gather information and then see what it feels like to set it aside for a moment and come back. This body, this breath, your attention on the simpleness of this moment, where right now there really isn't anywhere else for you to be. Right now there really isn't anything else for you to do. Not right now. And that big matters and small matters can be looked at and then set down for a time. As you come back into presence, just this moment. Now I'm going to unmute everybody. If anyone has a comment or a question that you'd like to pose, you're very welcome. We've got about 5 minutes, and then we'll start to wrap up at about, in about 5 minutes. But unmute. You're welcome to chat a message to me or to speak up if you like. And if you don't have a question, then you just are going to use this time to sit and start to let yourself relax if you've tightened up. Take this time to come out of the thinking mind and into the aware mind. That's the same thing as your breathing body mind. And as you are checking in with your breath and your body, notice the sounds that you hear in the room around you, the sounds you may hear outside of that space you're sitting. I offer you the suggestion and the encouragement to go gentle with yourself into this day. Keep coming back. taking rest in a moment, laying down the decision making, laying down for a moment the problem solving, setting down for a moment the doing. Those moments are here in this day. And when they present themselves, I hope you're gentle with yourself and allow yourself. Whether it's a couple of breaths or a couple of minutes or a walk on your break time. And that this resting in the moment is the starting place, and it is the where you come back to when there is some thinking to be done, and there's decision making or acceptance decision making to be done. But you begin and you close that period of figuring out with some presence, even a few breaths, even a few moments. And that the head and the gut and the heart each have important things to bring to bear. None of them needs to have complete control over that decision. You have control over the decision. But they each have quite a lot of good information, I think, I would imagine. My name's Holly Anton. I'm an integrative psychologist at Sutter Institute for Health and Healing in Santa Rosa. And I wish you a gentle, easy rest of your day.